may take us hours, Eric, to try to dissect or project what the possible landing spots could look like for these conferences and these teams, but I'll hit on a few basic ones and then you could throw out where you think we could be headed. So here's one. So we learn of USC, UCLA, and then there are reports out there that not specifically Washington and Oregon, although that's out there, but that the Big Ten, I shouldn't say that the Big Ten's going after, but maybe two other schools are applying for Big Ten membership, however you want to look at it. Stanford and Cal would seem to be a pair similar to USC, UCLA. The Big Ten, of course, from an institutional standpoint, academic standpoint, you can hardly go wrong with Stanford and Cal. That would really improve the rating and the prestige of the Big Ten academically. And they take great pride in that, as does the Pac-12. The other thought there is, of course, the Big Ten has gone into California, Southern California, into Los Angeles. Now they take the San Francisco and San Jose market there. Or it's, as reported elsewhere, Washington, Oregon, from a football standpoint, those would be the two best programs long-standing that are left in the Pac-12 that would match up with the Big Ten. And then maybe you go to a pod system if you're the Big Ten and you group Washington, Oregon, USC, and UCLA together, and the travel is mitigated to a certain extent. And there are reports out there that this is simply a football basketball move and that the Pac-12 maintains a Olympic sport conference and then probably picks from the Mountain West, possibly San Diego State, Boise State, whatever they can pull together to maintain some level of, I don't want to say Power 5 conference because that's probably impossible if they lose Washington and Oregon, but maintain a conference that's strong in all other sports and a group of 5 level or whatever group of whatever it becomes on that in football.
Well, I will say, Mark, I just got a message here that Dennis Dodd of CBS reported from sources Oregon and Washington have been told by the Big Ten that it is standing pat for now and that they're waiting on a decision from Notre Dame. This is kind of breaking news here. And again, everything is happening so quickly. So I just wanted to react to that. If that's the case in Oregon, I mean, not to answer your question but maybe the question is less about Oregon and Washington leaving. And now if what Dodd is reporting and I trust his reporting, what does that mean for Oregon and Washington as kind of some of the last power programs remaining in the Pac-12? And it says for now, so maybe this is something that happens ultimately, but maybe it's not for 5 years. I don't know. Who knows how this is going to play out? But I think, if you're Oregon and if you're Washington, which historically have been of the conference teams left, pretty much the most relevant, probably throw Utah in there from the short term. Stanford's had some good years, but you're going to really have to carry the weight now. And I know USC and UCLA haven't been, USC in particular has been pretty disappointing the last 15 or so years, and Oregon's done its best to kind of hold it up. I think the pressure is so heightened now, and there is no room for faltering. And you kind of wonder, like I said earlier, I think I might have mentioned earlier, like if you use the Clemson model of trying to be in the ACC and trying to make the playoff, I just wonder how viable a Pac-10 team is to actually make a playoff run in the current system with the teams that are left in the conference, unless you run the table. I mean, I think you're looking at, it's kind of sad to think about. You just had a Power 5, group of 5. You don't know how to group them. Pac-12 without USC and UCLA probably isn't going to be perceived as a Power 5. It was already being kind of diminished before. And you kind of go, does Oregon have to take the Cincinnati route almost of, is that how you're going to see the Pac-12 schools now of, God, they have to run the table. Like they have to be perfect and unblemished. And I mean, Oregon plays Georgia this year. Maybe that, obviously the Pac-12 is still in place for the next 2 seasons, but like Oregon's got some big non-conference games coming up. Georgia the next couple of years, Texas A&M, Michigan State as well on the calendar. You kind of go, maybe you have to win that game and almost run the table to really have a spot available to you. So from an Oregon-centric perspective, if this news remains true, and I don't have any doubts right now that it probably is, boy, what a strange time if you're in Oregon. And I think, again, as a fan of the conference, someone who's grown up on the West Coast, having been in high school when USC was at the height of making these runs and being a national champion contender in Oregon, to start, 2009 to 2014 to be in the national championship discussion basically every year, to now get to a point not even a decade past the end of those runs, where it just doesn't feel like a Pac-10 slash Pac whatever. I don't know what the number is going to be, has a real path or a consistent path. I know that already was kind of faltering. It's just kind of a sad state of affairs, I think, if you are somebody who follows this conference and appreciates it the way I do, and I know so many do.
Absolutely. Pac-12 football, I know it gets a lot of ridicule, especially from younger people who can't have a perspective on history and don't know when the conference was great, but it's not been that long since the conference was viable, number one, as a Power Five. And you go back to the 80s and 90s, and there were years in which you could argue the Pac-12 was the best conference in America, and it was a solid argument.